Well, I'm a photographer. I was born and raised in New York City. I moved to Finland over 20 years ago. I came here as a Fulbright scholar to teach at, what was then Tyke, is now all part of Aalto University. But it was the art school. And I stayed on. I'm married to a Finn, and we had two children. We wanted to raise them here. Uh, Starting the company, I already had an established business, which I left in New York. I had, um, uh, I was well established in New York, but once you move countries, you have to start all over again. Um, I had a couple of exhibitions, interviews on television, newspaper articles, so that gave me some um, notoriety. People, a number of people had seen my name at least. Um, but it just takes time. You Business is done on a personal level. You need to know people, and you have to allow yourself time to get to know people, and for them to get to know you. It's slow. Finland's a small country. It's a small market, and uh, I'm an immigrant, and as an immigrant, you have to sort of prove yourself, that you can, work with the culture that you're in Finland, um, but in any country. Uh, it was it takes time, and you have to allow yourself that time. It's not going to happen overnight, um, but it's been good. I mean, it's everything changed with digital. The market is much smaller. I'm talking into an iPhone, I believe it is, and I can tell you, iPhones did a lot to diminish the value of photography in general because many people could use an iPhone instead of having to hire a professional photographer. Um, but nevertheless, if you have skills, if you're able to take pictures um, that are clearly superior to what most people can get with their phone, there's a market. Um, and I mean that's how I established myself here. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean it is different. An Israeli friend of mine, also a photographer, who's been here longer than I have, made an observation, which I think is probably true. He said, when you move to a foreign country, you tend to focus on the things that are negative, the things that are different, the things that you're not familiar with. And it's obviously just makes sense. I mean, if it's unfamiliar, then it stands out. Um, but Finns are you know they're not generally a very outgoing nation. I mean, culturally, Finns tend to be more reserved than most of the other cultures that I've lived in. I lived in England for 3 years. I mean, 2 years. I've lived all over the United States, and the cultures are very different depending on what part of the United States you're in. Finland is definitely um, special, and um, I think you also have to look at the history of the country. Finland was invaded and occupied for 750 years. They have every reason to be a little suspicious of foreigners. Um, but that said, it's this country has changed so dramatically in the time that I've been here. The generation between myself and my children, most of them studied abroad. Most of them worked abroad, and then they came back to Finland. They have a much more open attitude. It's a very different culture than it was 20 years ago. Uh, you have if you're an immigrant, you have to accept that you're an outsider, and people will see you that way. It doesn't have to be a negative. You just have to. understand that you're coming from a different point of reference than someone who was born here. Um, Finland is a great country, and it's uh, tolerant is an sort of odd word to use, but yeah, Finns tend to be accepting. That doesn't mean they're inviting. You do have to earn that. Whereas a lot of people in the States will um, be overly friendly, and they don't mean it either. I much rather deal with Finns where they're honest about how they feel.